A lovely and positive Monday to you, our viewers. Good morning. I'm your host, Miriam Kaimba, and in studio, I'm not alone. I'm joined by my colleague, Patrick Sokowell. We're going to be taking you for an hour or so, and we're going to be looking at various trending issues that are happening in our community. And exactly at 8 hours, we'll be joined by a guest where we're going to be looking at the role that the community plays in preventing, substance abuse. Good morning, Soko.
Good morning.
Is it a positive Monday?
We keep it positive and we keep moving. We cannot let any negativity to outweigh the positivity that we are having this morning. So we keep it a positive Monday and want to start the rest of the day of the week on a positive note, and that's what we are anticipating. I can confirm that actually we have another positive brother in Makokwakozi who has joined the positivity agenda.
Interesting.
When I was with him on Thursday last week, he was actually saying, I want to be positive, just like Miriam, and I want to make sure that we move with the theme.
I'm glad that, I've started recruiting more people. Yeah, I'm glad. It shows that, okay, at least I'm having this beautiful impact on certain people. But anyway, you have to ensure that, you keep your day very positive, because, any single negativity can, affect the rest of your day. But always, ensure that you keep it positive. So before we go into our health corner, how was your weekend?
Well, the weekend was lovely, but tiresome. I can confirm that we had quite a number of activities at home. I couldn't rest much. I had to move up and down here, do, the business of news. We keep on moving, searching for news. It was just involving. And yesterday I had a wonderful time. I was just doing the things we do over the weekend,
Putting
the intros and everything. So usually our weekends are pretty much the same, and that's the routine. We keep on moving on.
Anyway, just a reminder to our viewers that exactly at 07:30 hours sharp, we'll open our phone line so that you, our viewers out there, can participate in our conversation this morning. And those watching us live on Facebook, please do drop us those messages so that we get interacted. But right about now, let's get direct into our health corner.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Ma Asambang from the Medical Women's Association of Zambia. Today I'll be discussing hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a global health concern because millions of people die from it. And actually, in reference to Zambia, it has affected many, especially adults who have been born with parents who have been diagnosed with hepatitis B. Now, hepatitis B is a virus that causes an infection to the liver. What happens is the liver's function becomes compromised. You may ask, how so? Well, the liver is responsible for digestion. For example, when you take that tablet of Panadol, your liver is responsible for breaking it down. Perhaps you may even take food. Well, your liver also has a role to play. Perhaps you may also take alcohol. Now that is where your liver dysfunction may become worse. With hepatitis B, it is progressive. What I mean by that is sometimes you may not present with a symptom nor a sign. And it may come as a surprise when you go to the clinic and get diagnosed with hepatitis B. Unlike HIV, hepatitis B requires for a constant follow-up, and it also depends on the case that is presented before us. There are several causes of hepatitis, I might add. And before I delve deeper into hepatitis B, please note that there are 5 types. Aside from hepatitis B, there is A, C, D, and E. Now, you may ask what the difference is between all these types. When it comes to A and C, these are transmitted via fecal-oral route. That simply means that someone can acquire it from contaminated water or food. Now, when it comes to hepatitis B, D, and E, those are transmitted via blood. So, for example, if someone has sex with someone who has hepatitis B without protection, without a vaccination, then their likelihood of acquiring hepatitis B is very high. Now, speaking back on transmission, aside from sexual intercourse, it is possible to acquire it from an infected needle, syringe, or any sharp object. And so you may find that someone who is a drug user may present with hepatitis B because the virus thrives for approximately 7 days. So it is unlike HIV, whereby the exposure may be a lot less. However, needless to say, it is possible to get the hepatitis B virus via blood. Also to mention, it can be transmitted from mother to child. And so if a mother who presents with hepatitis B does not know that she is positive and her child is not vaccinated, then the likelihood of the baby having hepatitis B is very high. Facts have shown that hepatitis B presents in adults who were perinatally or who had the virus transmitted to them during birth is very high, as opposed to children who had their parents tested and who received the vaccination. It is of note that it can present during adulthood. When it does present during adult, monitoring is necessary. Now, when it comes to hepatitis B, you need to ensure that you obtain the necessary care, which includes diagnosis. It includes having your liver function tested. It includes knowing your hemogram, or in simple terms, your hemoglobin, your platelet count, having an ultrasound done to ensure that your liver is not injured. We also have a fibroscan done for our patients. And so, as I said, hepatitis B cases are unique. There is no one fits all. It is of note that hepatitis B is not curable, but treatable. Studies have shown that a few patients present with a negative hepatitis B test and have an undetectable viral load. However, this does not mean that it cannot present once again. Why do I say so? Because it is possible to be exposed to the virus again. Hence, hepatitis B is not curable. For the most part, it is treatable. It is also of note that hepatitis B can be protected, or rather, prevented against. How so? Via vaccination. And as I mentioned, it is possible for a baby to have the virus if they are not protected within 24 hours. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'm Dr. Asambang from the Medical Women's Association of Zambia. Until tomorrow.
There you have it. I hope you learned one or two things there. We do appreciate the doctors for coming forth to give us those healthy tips. Quite important that we continue to get those tips. But anyway, right about now, let's go direct into our money market. So we have the United States dollar there buying at 18 kwacha 94 ngwe and selling at 19 kwacha 32 ngwe. We have the Great British Pound there buying at 24 kwacha 05 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 52 ngwe. We have the Euro there buying at 20 kwacha 77 ngwe and selling at 21 kwacha 180 ngwe. We have the South African Rand there buying at 1 kwacha and selling at 1 kwacha 02 ngwe. That is our money update for today, the 14th of August 2023. Yeah, we have continued seeing that on the buying part, at least the dollar is going toward 18 now, but on the selling part, we have seen that it has continued not to remain on at 19, and we're almost close for it to reach 20 kwacha. But anyway, if you're keeping dollars, it's good for you. Like me.
Who share those dollars? That's if you are keeping them at all, because I remember the colleague who used to sit just there where you were seated, who used to claim to have saved dollars when they had no single dollar. But that was such unfortunate, misleading myself. And we just hope that the kwacha will continue to be trading within that range, even better reduced, because if it heads towards the 20 kwacha mark, that will be detrimental to the local economy. But we are seeing that there has been a lot of various economic shocks that are leading to the local currency performing badly, and we just hope that the government will continue to put in place measures to ensure that this kwacha is performing accordingly. Overall, economists have been advising that there's a need to have a stable and strong currency in the long run. That is vital for economic development.
Exactly. Moving forward, we now go direct into zooming in some of the stories that made headlines yesterday in our main news, and quite interesting. So on Saturday, we did see a very, very interesting story. But before we play that story, let's get to hear the story. This is a story where residents of Lusaka, Fombelo area and Kabanana compound of Mandelvu constituency have bemoaned the lack of access to quality treated healthy water. One of the residents, Chelo Kachila, explains that residents have been surviving through water drilled from boreholes where they are required to pay 1 kwacha per 20-liter bucket. Let's get to look at that story.
According to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6 on clean water and sanitation for all, the goal aims to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all by 2030. The clock is ticking, but Fumbelo residents in Lusaka's Mandevo constituency lack access to clean and safe water. The residents of Fumbelo are worried that the area's population is growing and access to necessities such as water remains a pipeline dream to be realized. In the words of Audrey Hepburn, water is life and clean water means health, but these residents survive through untreated water from drilled boreholes.
When it comes to water, you have to pay. If there is no power, there is no access of water. All those are challenges that we have been facing. If the government or the councillor, we don't know, I don't even know the councillor from this side. Those are challenges that we have been having. So if there's a councillor who can come up and at least do 1 or 2. It just can't start now, but start with something.
Tidanda ulako government vuto challenge ameti mapezeka nayo ni nkhani ya manzi yativuta niyo vutisa. So dandalo government itianganeko pankhani ya manzi.
Kulibe amene muona matanki yani yavene bage tigura tilepera 50 ngwe yakukanga kuti ugulire manzi. Tilibe government kuno sina tipasepo manzi bwanji.
Kuno kwatu kulibe manzi ya kanso. Manzi timachitopempa kuti bali na maboho timagula chabe ma container 1 kwacha container imosi. Ero plus na matenda amene yamangalako covid chani vimafuna manzi yambiri. So manje se manzi timachitogula container imosi 1 kwacha.
And Mpolungu wa 26 Councillor Chileshe Mwango says a water project has been completed awaiting distribution to the community.
The biggest challenge that we had here in Mpolungu at 26 is pretty much the issue of water. Now this has come into fruition. Since this project has come into fruition, the water challenge now is a thing of the past. Is now currently we anticipate to save about more than 87,000 households within the ward. Now we've completed the project, and at this point, we are just now doing the water distribution into the household communities.
While this is the status, residents believe unclear boundaries between Kabanana Ward 27 and Impolungu Ward 26 have plunged them into underdevelopment, to which Kabanana Ward 27 Councillor Joseph Katongo confirms.
Speaking, that ward belongs to Councillor Mwang, that side, yeah. That's how the map is. But people from there, they vote from my ward, but they don't belong in my ward. The boundary for Kabanana Ward, it's the tarmac, Kabanana Chazanga Road. For them to be helped out, I'm sure me have been working closely with Councillor Mwango. If there is anything, I always tell him what is happening. If there is need for us to come together and work, we always do that. But the person who has got the final say on his ward is the area councillor for the ward.
Now, should residents of the area wait for 2026 for them to see development? Nelson Zulu for Camnet News, Lusaka.
What is strange, I don't know how to call it, but anyway, it's a sad situation for the residents because they do not have water. But again, when it comes to their civic leader in their respective ward, you heard what the previous councillor is saying, Kabanana Ward 27 councillor is saying that, you know, those people vote from my ward, and then these... Anyway, I hope that they, at the end of the day, they get to resolve the issues and the people, a service is delivered to the people so that they can have access to water at the end of the day.
I think it is a question of the Electoral Commission of Zambia also intervening in that matter, because it is a scenario where we are seeing that people are voting from a different ward and the votes are counted for another wards. Wow, the ward belongs to another councillor. So these other councillors are arguing to say, they do not vote from, they do not support me. Yes. Their votes do not count on my side.
So why should I
be facilitated for development? And the other one also says, you know, it's quite a unique story that that reminds us on the need to pay attention and address it, because it is a urgent matter, because those people, technically, they are orphaned in that there's no one to actually,
really? Did you just
represent them. Yes, because at the end of the day.
But at least, despite they're not really completely orphaned, but
you see, when it comes to development,
they still have their area member of parliament.
Yes, they have an area member of parliament. But these wards, when they are lobbying for development, who is speaking for them? Because when you are lobbying on the CDF committee, you have to say, under this ward, what do you want to see? So you discover that this person, because they vote from that other ward, they say this ward is not part of my ward, but forgetting that they are also counted from his ward. You understand? But again, so they tend to be neglected in terms of development, and that's a genuine concern, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think the word should be allocated to the person who gets the vote.
Exactly.
I think that should be the one to get the vote. Yeah. I know there is a pending delimitation process.
Because I think it would be so unfair. Someone gets the vote and then someone else is expected to do the delivering of service.
Exactly. So I think as the Electoral Commission of Zambia, they did undertake the delimitation process. However, that there's been delays because that is also a constitutional matter. There are a lot of constituencies that need to be demarcated. There are some constituencies that are too vast, and for a single member of parliament, it has been difficult. So resources permitting and also changes to the constitution granted, the Zambia has to delimitate some of the constituencies. They have to go beyond the 150. We have to increase more constituencies, because that is a concern that some constituencies are very vast, so something has to be done about it.
Yeah, like Kanyama, Mandevu, quite vast. But anyway, moving forward, let's take a look at one of the stories that made headlines on Saturday, where drama Saturday morning engulfed Lusaka's Chaisa compound after a wedding of a self-proclaimed prophet was cut short by a woman he left at her parents' house with a child. At his parents' house with a child. Let's get to look at that story.
Indeed, not everyone on earth agreed as this wedding in Lusaka's Chaisa ended dramatically. A self-proclaimed prophet dodged her parents' house, leaving in their custody a woman bearing his child. It was all rosy, but not until the moment the presiding preacher requested for anyone to oppose the union from the audience. From the crowd came the woman, Nancy Sakara, not her real name, the girlfriend he picked from her parents' house, promised marriage, but here marrying another woman. The incident sent the small cheerful gathering into disarray, and comfort was coming from all angles, including secular music. After about 3 hours of deliberations, the wedding was eventually called off. Mother to the groom told this reporter off camera that efforts to advise his son against the wedding fell on deaf ears and was excited with the outcome. The groom and his party attempted to physically attack this reporter, demanding all footage to be deleted. Further attempts to interview the groom and other family members were turned down on fear of being exposed. Away from the wedding scene, Sakara explained that she opted to disband the wedding as the said prophet left her languishing with his son.
Kumbali enzo kubwela kunyumba kwangu nkamba tawe nza kukwatira dzasunga pamozi mwana. Apa kumvera luma kuti awe achita wedding nwanda nezina bwela kuti ni bweni ishinikishe niona ndinilese because uja muntu akaboni tula manja mama parents wanga ananitaba mu nyumba. My parents nkudala pamena choka because apa ni donza 3 years. Mwanzale mu 2021.
Meanwhile, Concerned Citizens for Justice and Human Rights Executive Director Richard Nkua has condemned the behavior of the said prophet.
Around is doing illegal thing which is not supposed to be done according to the Bible. So we totally condemn as organization, and we also further advise other men to say, let's not engage into illegal activities. Let's finish up with other things. That's when you can engage into other activities. Women must be protected, and also women should also...
For now, Concerned Citizens for Justice and Human Rights is in the process of reconciling stranded Sakara with her parents he left about 3 years ago for the said prophet. For Camnet News, Afia Skaptula, Lusaka.
Quite interesting, Soko. I have no way. I'm speechless. Why in the first place would you want to take up such a move? Huh? Could you have an idea why would someone wake up in the morning, leave a woman at home with a child and just decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to get married to this woman, despite, not having, and I'm sure there were no other family members, because if the mother is complaining that we told this young man to stop whatever he was doing, but he did not listen to us.
It's a delicate story, but I think the moral of the story is that let us not run away from our responsibility. And every time we are, for example, marriage is a sacred thing, and we have to make sure, even at the time you are venturing into marriage, you should be in a position that you clear out everything, as opposed to living unattended issues, because they tend to haunt you. Because I think since I've seen that this story has gotten a lot of feedback on our Facebook page, and if you look, people are questioning to say, but why didn't the prophet foresee that the wedding was going to be cancelled? You should have foreseen that such an outcome coming out. But being what it is, people to err is human. But as a man of God, every time it is advised that you lead by example. So how do you help people of your congregation to get married in a holy manner if you are in the forefront doing that, But also, in the other aspect, we have to also take note that what he might have done is against the law, because if he was married to that woman, under customary law, that's bigamy. He can be sued for that. So it's a crime again. And we also have to understand there are a lot of dynamics to this story. I think these are issues that border on gender-based violence in these communities, if we have a look at it. Because at the end of the day, also, we have to also establish, was he taking care of the child adequately, providing the necessary support, as well as the wife? To what extent did they agree? Did they agree that it was just damage and that was going to just pay for the damages and not going to marry the lady. So all those dynamics have to be explained and understood, but all the same, you always have to do your due diligence before you go and hold another procession, because for me it also shows lack of responsibility, and for someone who claims to be representing the true gospel of Jesus Christ, I think it leaves much to be desired. Because these are, at the end of the day, these are issues that tend to tarnish the Christianity in this country, because you see people who are supposed to lead by example doing to the contrary. And that's something we need to be paying attention to, because if we are to preserve this religion, Christianity is upholds on the Bible, and the Bible is a sacred document that gives guidance on how we should lead our lives. So if at all we are going to be diverting and doing things as we please, I think we'll be tarnishing this religion, and Christianity is a good religion that that needs to be upheld and promoted, and we have to ensure that we convert more people into Christianity. But with such a behavior, how do you tend to convert more people?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because as a church leader, I'm sure because he calls himself, anyway, he says he's a prophet.
Yes, self-proclaimed.
So self-proclaimed prophet. So there's a certain, people, a number of people that, he leads. So people are looking up to him. And, with Christianity, you'll find that maybe your pastor, you look up to your pastor because you wouldn't want to find them in a certain situation manner. These are people who you believe that are appointed by God and doing things according to the word of God. So if certain things like this, yes, I know they're not perfect, they can err, but there are certain things that they shouldn't do.
That are avoidable.
That are avoidable. Like in this situation,
that was totally avoidable, because if you see the mother to the groom is saying that I advised my son, but you feel you are a papa, and you can just say the Lord has spoken with me, and this wedding is going on. They tend to use such terms, and at the end of the day proceed with that, and the consequences are that. And you see now the outcome, I think, was so embarrassing. If you have a look at it.
Yes.
And that is something we need to be taking serious, even as also men of God, as you take to bless the marriage. Did you do through thorough counseling,
yes.
all those things,
Yes, because I know some certain men of God wouldn't want to bless your marriage if they know they are going to be kind of certain confusion. They would say, I think the best thing you can do is ensure that you clear your past, okay? Make peace with everyone, so that by the time you're proceeding with this ceremony, there are no, other engagement that are going to tarnish your name or tarnish the reputation of the church.
That's what we've been talking about here, Miriam, where people wake up just from nowhere and say, because probably you haven't been able to find employment somewhere, and you just wake up to say, I think I'm a prophet. These things take a lot of time and procedure. So you just can't wake up and ordain yourself as a prophet. So all those things, they come with time. But
remember, we were arguing last time where, not really, but we had put up a very good debate that some people would claim that, you don't have to go a certain process. If you're chosen by God, maybe you saw it in your dream automatically, like that, because others will argue and want to say, but Jesus never went to a Bible school.
Yeah, so, but those are matters of the spirit. And Jesus only lived once, and there's only one Jesus. So we have to understand the dynamics. And people then, even the way the people live their lives, it shows, So now, you claim to be a prophet, and you find yourself in such a predicament. What do you make of your reputation? And you expect people to follow your church? That's something we need to do. That's food for thoughts. And you, our dear viewers, want to get your perspective on this subject. Just your comment and contribution on this story that we played pertaining to a prophet who was actually getting married, leaving behind someone he had promised marriage, and they went ahead and disrupt the wedding. And that is the story that we're looking at. But interesting enough, we also have another story where the Ministry of Health is worried that at the rate women are abusing a tobacco substance locally known as insunko. In an interview, Minister of Health Acting Chief Non-Communicable Disease Officer Ernest Kakoma says insunko has many health complications on women, citing it to be one of the contributing factors to diseases such as cancer. He notes that most women are abusing the substance by either applying it on their private parts or sniffing it. Meanwhile, in an exclusive interview with Camnet News, some women who use the substance, also known as sniff claim Nsunko, boost their immune system, and that it is good for maintaining normal blood pressure. So let's have a look at this story where we are looking at Nsunko, also which is a tobacco substance.
Nikauka nichikapu cha manzi kali nilibe unga namasha nilibe niopimi wanaongo nivuta tii zaisha sapati sunko ya mene akalioni Mungu na monga ni boza.
This snuff kind of tobacco, locally known in Zambia as sonko, has for a long time been preserved for the elderly women in society who use it as a purported cure for headache.
Paso hapa niluvera muturu zunguruka monga na mwamowa naomo wakaena junta ija yabele inkalubo mwapo lomba ifu akankapepa awe nzendo gona komati mashoka ku brain kapena ni mwamene machitira nuona pamene tipepa nda brain yonse iliwa yosokonezeka. That's why ni maendo gona. Mbanka gona mazulo kapena kuma 11 koloko basi nauka na mvirako na power. Nuone pali poto yansi unga kulibe maja nchitebwa. Vana na watambuya njara.
Now, it has become so popular among young women and girls, especially those of their sexually active age between 15 and 45, and its use is spreading like bushfire. The World Health Organization warns that snuff causes oral, esophageal, and pancreatic cancers. It is usually placed in the mouth between the lower lips and gum, with the belief that it tightens their private parts and assist to stimulate their sexual drive.
Manje sungo kaipepa. Kodi ngafundise tupi. Nanga pokukwatira unapepa nsunko. Awe. Iyo ni generation ya basikana chabeweka. Muntu mulungu mwamene anakupangira ni mwamene umo. Kulibe kuti uchiteso kuli ine kumbali yanga monga ati mwamene nafikira so sinionapo mwandini ninkani yawo chabe kosa mvera kwao. That's why vileta na problem manje mmatupi yao. Muona makansa, muona vamene matenda amene ambiri amene yabwera mtupi y'abantu. Chifukwa chapa vamene bachita palasta tia ibamulowa.
Despite these threats to health, the rate at which women and girls are buying and using it is alarming. The Ministry of Health, through the Acting Chief Non-Communicable Disease Officer Ernest Kakoma, says Nsunko has many health implications for women.
The body absorbs the chemicals through the blood, so it can cause diseases of the blood, and it can also cause diseases of the heart, the kidneys, and it can affect many parts of the body. So we would actually advise our people that use any form of tobacco product, be it the nsunko, be it the smoked tobacco or any products, to quit. And for those that have not even initiated, we advise them not to start.
With these side effects, a public health policy advocate says it is unfortunate that some people are still using sonko and other so-called sexual enhancing substances, largely due to ignorance.
But that is a misconception, and I think that is the information that needs to go out. You know, there are a lot of people, especially the young people, who believe that vaping is not smoking. Vaping is not tobacco, and that's what the industry wants them to believe. Smoking shisha is not a problem, you know, but these are all tobacco products.
Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
There you have it. That's an interesting story. They are coming from Lusaka's Chawama constituency and talking about Nsunko. It is a common issue that is spreading like wildfire, claimed the reporter, and true to that. And we see that people continue to use this substance. However, it has health complications, and tobacco activists have been speaking against this tendency, and we are seeing it being common, especially among young people, and as well as just like we have seen vaping, which is through electronic cigarettes, as well as the aspect of where we have on the other hand we have the shisha. This has been a very big problem that we are now facing, because young people are being initiated into tobacco like that. But however, through and through, we are seeing that young people are being recruited into tobacco smoking, because we are seeing that there are no stiff measures to prevent this problem, because the advertisements are usually placed where these children are found. And children, when you give a child a coin to go and buy a sweet, they can even buy a stick, as opposed to actually buying a sweet and to say, let me taste. Because as again, parents also have bad tendencies when it comes to tobacco. You tend to send your children to go and buy these cigarettes in the shops, and the children tend to say, okay, if my father can do that, my mother can do that, I think it is a normal thing to do. And we are initiating our children indirectly, and that is not good. And we are seeing again that even tobacco smoking is being done publicly. But we should also understand that when you are smoking tobacco in public, there's also what we call secondary users who are affected, because the smoke also affects passers-by. If you are smoking, you should smoke in a private arrangement where you do not affect anyone, because if you are smoking in public, there are also secondary users who are affected because of what you are smoking. It also, the smoke also tends to affect them, so, and they can equally suffer the same diseases that you are likely to suffer as the person who smokes tobacco. But tobacco among children is something that we need to guard against, because we are seeing it that young people think it is fashionable, but no, it is not. It has a lot of complications. It contributes to cancer diseases, heart diseases, stroke, and among other things. So let's make sure that we avoid tobacco at all costs. And that's what we can advise this morning, because we are privy to that. We have been speaking to various health practitioners, the doctors have been talking about some of the complications. If you go to UTH, most of the complications that they attend to are as a result of one, abusing tobacco. Most of the cancer diseases that we are facing also at the cancer disease hospital, most of them are attributed to tobacco. So we have to make sure that we guard our body's health, because you can imagine you have those good lungs and you start injecting that smoke into your body, and where do you expect the smoke will go and settle? It settles on your lungs, it settles on in your chest.
And the danger is that Zambia at the moment, Patrick, we have over 7,000 people who die to tobacco related diseases every year. And then the country spends again every year about 2.8 billion to treat such kind of diseases. Imagine all that money being spent. So this is something that we should continue talking about. And like you said, we have seen that parents intend to send their young children to a nearby shop and to send them to buy a cigarette. But one thing parents should be reminded of is that children look up to them as their role models. So if you're going to send your child basically will have it in their mind that whatever my father is doing, it's normal. Without knowing that it's addictive to them.
You're right. So those are some of the things we need to be paying attention to as a country, because at the end of the day, we'll be spending more on the health sector pertaining to treating these diseases that we are faced with as a result of tobacco smoking.
And just a reminder to our viewers that we have now officially opened our phone lines, and we're looking at the role of community in preventing substance abuse, among them tobacco, drugs, different type of drugs, including Sungo itself. I know a lot of women are victims of are victims of using this drug. You know, yesterday when I was on the ground, I was doing that story. You know, the first question I got was like, but mufuna muziwe chadi, you know? I said, we have a lot of misconception around Nsunko, and people need to know. But again, people do not realize the danger that Nsunko has, because them, they think, sifwaka, sini paper, you know? It's okay, not knowing that it contains the element of tobacco inside.
Yeah, and it's quite addictive if you
exactly.
see. So if you start, it's not easy to stop. So
it's not easy to stop. You could hear my grandmother saying, "Wah,
because she wants to sleep. When she wants to sleep, she'll take Sunko. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's but like so it tells you that there's some stuff there that are affecting you.
They are affecting you. But again, Soko, you have to realize that during the interview, I'm sure you heard a certain part where she said, you know, because of this economy, I do not have, you know, resources to buy food, to provide for
I would rather sleep.
I would rather sleep. So I would rather take Nsunko. You know, it tells you something, that people are taking certain drugs because, you know, they want to move away from the pressure. But again, they have to realize that in as much as you take that stuff...
Yes, but she did tell you that immediately she wakes up, she realizes to say, the grandchildren are saying, Njala, we want this and everything. So,
exactly.
So it tells that you can only postpone the pressure for a while. But probably she needs that rest for a while to avoid constantly reminding herself of what she needs to do. But let's also have a story where a social scientist, Innocent Kolala, has charged that the commercialization of politics is not only undermining the participation of women and youths in politics, but the country's democracy as a whole. So let's have a look at this story. We'll be back on the other side, and let's get interacting on the Camnet Breakfast Show, Monday edition, where we focus on community issues.
Zambian politics are not child's play, and over the years, money has been among determining factors to be elected as councillor, member of parliament, and presidential level, including during intra-party adoptions. And the 2021 general elections demonstrated that, apart from the will of the people to determine who carries the day, money also has a larger say. And an initial assessment that was conducted by Transparency International Zambia TIZ prior to the August 12, 2021 general election revealed that in June, the Patriotic Front spent 6.05 million kwacha on campaign billboards across the country, followed by the Socialist Party at 2.26 million kwacha and the United Party for National Development UPND at 1.31 million kwacha. But that is just a small component of the cost. And what about feeding the food soldiers, the purchasing of t-shirts and chitenge materials, as well as associated printing costs? And in all these, vulnerable groups such as persons with cross-cutting disabilities, women and youths are sent out of the equation. And Government Chief Whip Princess Kasune notes that more must be done to improve women participation in politics.
Participation of women in parliament, we have now dropped to 15%. Okay, when we are trying to fight for the 50-50 gender representation. So this has to be underscored. And as they say, numbers do not what? Do not lie. It's the same even at local level where they have councillors. Worse off where you have chairmen, you know, the mayors and the council chairmen. So that means we have a problem. We need to realize that we are coming from a background of highly patriarchal society. So whether you know it or not, some of it we even do it unsubconsciously, that women are just seen to say they can support other parliamentarians, but they themselves cannot be seen.
Meanwhile, social scientist Innocent Kolala says the commercialization of politics is undermining women and youth participation in politics.
It has led most intellectual individuals who have what it takes to become a leader of a what? A leader of a constituency, neither of a district nor the country, failing to ascend to such positions. Why? Because the corruption, the rampant corruption, which has given now the people, the few individuals, power now to start now commercializing politics. This time around, we have seen now youths and women have just been turned into the vuvuzelas. They are just now dancers, dancing now for these corrupt individuals, most corrupt individuals, for these tycoons who wants to take up powers. Having money does not mean that a person has got knowledge in terms of running the country or in terms of running the constituency, the ward, the district. Not at all.
He has also advised electorates not to vote based on material things candidates provide, but seek to vote for people of substance and good leadership qualities.
And even ourselves, the voters, at times you are to blame because we have accepted to be used by these selfish politicians, by these selfish individuals who just wants to use us as riders or to use us as ladders for them to reach where they want to reach. And moreover, at times we might not even know the source of the income, the same money which they are dishing out. Maybe it could have been a loan which they got. Immediately they take up authority or power. What do you expect them to do? What you expect them to do is not to be coming to see you there. Why? Because now they have to work extra hard in ensuring that they retain such resources from where they got from.
Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
There you have it. That was social scientist Innocent Mulenga Kolala, as well as the government chief whip, deputy chief whip, Princess Kasune, who is also Kembe constituency member of parliament, talking about issues pertaining to women participation in politics, as well as young people. And Mr. Kolala was also bringing out issues bordering on suggesting that the commercialization of politics actually is undermining the participation of women and youth in politics, because it is more a resource agenda other than the ideas being put on the table. So you find that young people may not have the financial muscle to be able to compete adequately. Equally, vulnerable groups such as persons with cross-cutting disabilities are equally affected in terms of effectively participating. Women, that is also the case. We have seen that in some, just for other women to get adoptions, we had also cases where people wanted to be taking advantage of women, and also issues bordering to say, what is this woman giving us? Some of us who are going to make sure that we vouch for her to be able to contest for adoption. So these stories have been emerging, and we are reminded on the need to see what measures are we putting in place to make sure that we reverse this trend that has been with us for a long time in the Zambian political landscape. So it is something that we need to pay attention to and seek solutions and be able to address, because women participation, youth participation, even persons with disabilities have been complaining that it has been a problem for them to adequately participate on national matters, and that seems to be a challenge that needs attention. We understand that we had moved on a journey to introduce the mixed member proportion of electoral system, but then it was also at a time when we had the issues pertaining to the Bill 10, and the Bill 10 was a controversial subject when we were trying to adopt the constitution as a country, and we saw that we had two discourses, those for and those against, and those against said the Bill 10 had a lot of bad elements and that it was going to affect Zambia's democracy, and that it could not go through. And however, the demise of Bill 10 also affected some of the progressive clauses that could have made a difference pertaining to the participation of minority groups in parliament, in governance. So, but however, there's also a window of opportunity. We've seen that also President Hakainde Hichilema has pronounced that they are going to make sure that they put in place mechanisms that will enable the country to undertake constitutional reforms. We have spoken with the Minister of Justice on several occasions pertaining to reforms, and stakeholders are also concerned that there has been delays in terms of us making the progress towards undertaking these constitutional reforms. Constitutional reforms in that we have to also address some of the lacunas that are in the Constitution. For instance, the issue of the 14 days of hearing a presidential petition was not conclusively addressed. The issue pertaining to third term, because we had issues bordering referring to the eligibility of former President Edgar Lungu, and that case, in as much as that it was said that the president was fit to contest, others were still not convinced, and that it also provides room for another reoccurrence in the future if another person would want to follow suit, like what transpired pertaining to the issue bordering on former President Edgar Lungu. So constitutional reforms have been said to be a priority, and we're also talking about issues bordering on the enactment of the Bill of Rights. So when we're talking about the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights also failed because during the 2016 general elections, there was a concern that the Bill of Rights was going to be enacted alongside the Constitution, alongside the elections. And the elections contaminated the Bill of Rights because people were voting on partisan line on a non-controversial matter that is supposed to actually a constitutional matter for that fact. And we lost out on an opportunity to enact the Bill of Rights that was going to compel the government, for instance, to provide some of the rights without any restriction, to make sure that they uphold their commitment and they were going to be held accountable for any failures pertaining to upholding the rights of citizens. So we failed that. So constitutional reforms are imminent, and we continue to track this process so that our citizens can get to know when are we likely to have these reforms. Miriam.
Exactly, and also just talking about one of the things that you should have also included in your talk is the Public Order Act. We have seen that various stakeholders did submit their submissions there, but we haven't seen it yet being tabled before Parliament, and that is one thing that stakeholders are still looking up to, that it is it is tabled before Parliament. Anyway, right about now, just a reminder to our viewers that we are looking at this morning the role of the community in preventing substance abuse, or rather drug abuse. What is the role that you think community members should play? You, our viewers who are watching us early in the morning in the comfort of your home, what do you think is the role that you should play in order to prevent substance abuse in our various respective communities? I know communities like Mississippi Compound, Chawama, John Leng, and other, to mention but a few, and also not forgetting Chiwolia Compound. We have seen that a majority of youths we have seen a very increase in this substance abuse by a majority of youths, and not only youths, women as well, and young girls. Quite sad that young girls are also now abusing these drugs. Very, very sad. But anyway, we hope that various stakeholders will continue with their sensitization, as well as the Drug Enforcement Commission and other players, will be able to do more sensitization to ensure that, citizens understand that the effects and the dangers of abusing this substance. But anyway, right about now, let's get direct into playing one of the stories that we did in 2022, where a young man who is aged 27 years old, was at the verge of, destroying his life due to the abuse of this substance. An energetic person whose dream was to become a plumber and contribute to the country's national development, but this dream seemed to be going the opposite direction for Ephraim Banda of Lusaka's Kanyama Compound, who is at the verge of completely turning mad. The medical expert attributes the condition to excessive abuse of drugs. At only 27 years old, Ephraim's life has turned into an unexplainable reality. Just from the conversation, one is able to tell that not everything is well with him.
Come over, man. Come over.
Despite being in this condition, Ephraim still troubles his mother for money so that he can sneak out of the house and get himself the opportunity to use a very famous drug among his youths in the shanties of Kanyama, known as Volo, a drug that is almost leaving him insane. The pain of seeing a once energetic son turn himself into a complete stranger leaves Langiwa Zulu in total distress.
Sote bachavuta maningi huyu. Ani ma drugs ndiye amuvuta. Ndiye mina mfundisa na mapapers ya yanoti banalemba
uchani chite hospital kukabwe ni pole mbata anafunta na drugs samaine tandizo mimi ningafuneko ndabanalema hapa mwandi ni 5 years manje uyu mwana saleka kutenga drugs pa Friday petachoka kuchainama pa Friday last week banamchita cancel kufika kuno kunyumba anaenda futi kubema futi chamba futi na kufunta unaona sasa nkaziki kama unonga vitu vabe ndema windo kunyumba anapukanya banditezo tapa mazi vosa anapukanya manyumba yawe naono kama motoka yawe wake.
She is stressed, tired, but the love for her son is pushing her to ensure that he is completely healed from his addiction to drugs.
So ine mani nalema nifuna kwa tandizo kapani kuli wamea wantandize kapani kumulasa nyeleti kapani kumudrena kuchachusi kuti chichoke slizie mwandi vabe ningachite ndiye tandizo meni nifuna kwa ine pano kutoa nitandize eko mwandi uyu mwana na nalema na uyu mwana uyu 5 years this year was 5 years manje afunda chape so chape so apenza ku school kukabwe hapa next month so hapa August afu niko lembe exam zo chip ka course ka plumbing aso hapa naleka afunda so abgera ko sazalemba na exam.
And Concerned Citizen for Justice and Human Rights Organization has called on various stakeholders to help and take up the case of 27-year-old Ephraim Banda.
We are facing a lot of challenges in the communities. So right now, I think this is an opportunity for the government, and this is an opportunity for the institution like DEC to come on board, and we work hand in hand to fight the issue of drug abuse in the communities. And we also appealing to those who are selling certain drugs like in the pharmacies, chemists. There are certain drugs that are being sold in the communities. I think it's something that we need to eliminate as a country.
The use of illicit drugs is now the major challenge Zambia must deal with. According to data, around 275 million people used drugs worldwide in 2020, while over 36 million people suffered from drug disorders, according to the 2021 World Drug Report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
That is there requires a multifaceted kind of approach for us to ensure that we stamp it out. As a commission, we've been relying on the joint operations committees for us to conduct investigations and to conduct operations in those areas. But at the same time, we need each and every person to, after we have conducted those operations, to come in and ensure that they assist in maintaining the peace and sanity that would have been brought about.
Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News. She appeared on Camnet TV a week ago, narrating a predicament of how a 27-year-old son, Ephraim Banda, is at the verge of completely turning mad due to his excessive abuse of drugs. Langiwe Zulu of Lusaka's Kenyama compound had also called on relevant authorities like the Drug Enforcement Commission to offer the needed psychosocial and psychological support to her son so that he might recover as quick as possible. Ephraim, who is fond of using a common drug known in local language as Volo, is now reported to have been admitted back at Chainama Hospital despite being recently discharged. Mrs. Banda tells Camnet News that her son has now spent 4 days at Chainama Hospital, where he's currently getting his treatment. However, feels not much is being done as her son keeps getting worse each and every minute.
Ngati kulabira ngapezeke wanilitandiza kuti kapera ma josa ma drena ma chusi chikakala mutu kuti antandizireko chapo kuti bamupompolole chusi chiti chinayengera kumutu kakabati ma drugs anakala addicted so kuti mu kapani kulasa manyeleti kapera machita bwanji kuti akali chape bwina kali nomo bamuchose bamudreneko ma drugs yanakala mumutu ndiye meni kapempeko chape kuti akali chape bwina ndabavuta apa so je de meni mubwere kuseni kwa kaina napo kufanya manje vintu vaveni wake mnyumba na kufanya nyumba tato kufanya pa window utiti mchose mnyumba mweneza napo tata vintu vamwene wake so ndipe tunampeleka ku China pa 19 jede ile chetekelo ninacho kuti mwana wanga zankhala bwino bakabwera konitandiza kapauza zankhala kwa pani ma doctors bomutandiza nizo kuti wakamtandiza cha Ephraim kapani kumpasa mankhwala kuti ma drugs mumutu yachoke chichetekelo chepe ninacho ndabe Ephraim ni mwana chapo bwino chapa na unongeka chepe ma drugs.
Meanwhile, Ephraim's elder sister calls on various stakeholders to come on board and help brother recover as quick as possible.
madrugs chapeni amna yakunga maningi skulu niyo aenda ku skulu kuti asirize skulu apeza na kutina vanzake so chamene chingangale kuchaba toka mchosa madrugs angala kuchabe kumbali kwa kuti sunga pezike na vacha vantu madrugs yaka ngamucheko kaso ni vacha vantu vamene saziva oziwozo vamene vazataisa kumuchita kanso salika ene muntu wakuti simungangale naye sumunga chomena naye pa nyumba azachoka chabe uchoka amene aenda azachoka bwinobwino pa nyumba uchoka amene achoka kabwera muzaona situation yechinji so tikapembe kuchabetandizo kuti vamene vangaziwe pavaso vangatitandizire.
According to data between 2010 and 2019, the number of people using drugs increased by 22%, owing in part of global population growth. Based on demographic changes alone, current projections suggest an 11% rise in the number of people who use drugs globally by 2030 and a marked increase of 40% in Africa due to its rapidly growth and young population. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Saturday, 10th June 2023, the Drug Enforcement Commission engaged the community members in Lusaka's Kalingalinga area of Monali constituency, a gesture that will be replicated in other constituencies. Monali Member of Parliament Mike Imposha, civic leaders, members of the general public, the church, the police and the business community converged to discuss issues affecting them and the way forward. Chief among them was the issue of community gangs, commonly known as junkies, and the issue of drugs and alcohol abuse among young people.
Wapeze mwamene wazatitandizira kuti abana wamene bachitataki bantu bakulu usiku ma junkie aba ba taking note kuti bachite employ bantu wamene bazambo tandizira sense community ni ikulu ya Kalingalinga mwamene tizachepese mwamene kuti ma junkie aba bachepe olokapena kusiriza ma group ya abana wamene babisa mabisama.
During the meeting, it was observed that combating vices cannot be left to the Drug Enforcement Commission and other law enforcement wings.
The fight against substance abuse is one serious fight that we need concerted effort as stakeholders, together with government being the major stakeholders. For example, in our case as the Youth Life Project Zambia, we've been working tirelessly with the Drug Enforcement Commission under the Sober Youth Lab program, where we've been getting in our community spaces, sensitizing the youth about the dangers of this vice of drug.
Meanwhile, the Commission says it has focused on enhancing community engagements and awareness in the country to combat drug abuse.
There hasn't been a word, a voice from the civic leaders. Hence, this is why we want, because they are closer to people, they are always with their people. So if they add a word on drugs, it may make a difference. So from Kanyama, then we'll go to Matero George Compound. And then we'll see how the response will be. Then the program can be extended to all parts of Lusaka. Later on, at national level, it should be extended to other provinces.
And Area Member of Parliament Mike Imposha, who is also Minister of Water and Sanitation, is disappointed that the council allowed lawlessness to thrive under its watch. He says the sale of alcohol in undesignated places, such as markets, must be curtailed in order to restore sanity.
Now we find that beer is being sold in markets. We have these liquor stores that are somehow becoming very unregulated. And I'm one lawmaker who is extremely displeased with Lusaka City Council, and I want to say that I had an engagement with them last week to tell them that this problem, we can't have someone setting up a liquor store and closing a public road, completely closing the road and forcing people to use one lane. It's happening right here in this constituency. And now people are operating as if they are daring the law enforcers, like you can't do anything. But the question is, what kind of licenses did you? I think this is the problem of drug abuse cannot be left to Drug Enforcement Commission alone, because the people who are selling these drugs are coming from certain homes within this community, but also the people that are, abusing these drugs, the young people, are also coming from our homes.
Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
Well, there you have it. Quite interesting stories. We were looking at bordering on issues pertaining to drug and substance abuse. Interesting enough, quite a number of issues emerged, and we also had an engagement in Kalingalinga where we had various stakeholders, and among them our guest of the day, Miriam Kaimba.
Yes, exactly. This morning we are looking at the role of community in preventing drug abuse, and in studio we're joined by Mr. Mike Nkosi, who is the Director for Youth Life Project Zambia. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
We're glad to have you on set.
The pleasure is all mine.
Just before we begin with our topic this morning, just highlight to us what is your organization all about and what are you focused on?
Okay, so we are a social justice organization. As a social justice organization that is youth-oriented, we are actually based in Kalingalinga, and our plight is to look into the lives of the youth and to make sure that they are given opportunities that are going to help reduce poverty among the youth. So what we do as an organization, we work with 4 pillars. These 4 pillars are mentorship and skills empowerment. Then we have the general wellness and sensitization. We also have counseling and rehabilitation programs, where we're actually very active working with DEC and other organizations that are in this sphere of substance abuse. Then we offer our space or our office, considering that, you know, when our parents were growing, they had spaces called welfare, social welfare. They had, you know, I mean, if you grew up around Chilenje, Kabwata, you know, there used to be a community hall.
Yes, there's always that.
Apparently, we don't have that in our communities, in our community setup. So, as a Youth Life Project, our office is big enough and it accommodates that. So, all the youth that are gifted in various ways, singing, be it dance, be it poetry, all these arts, even boxing, karate, our office is free for them to come and practice their art.
We have continued seeing the abuse of substance in our community despite more sensitization, you know, being undertaken by various stakeholders like yourself, the Drug Enforcement Commission, and many others. What is it that we are doing wrong, or rather we are not, you know, achieving in order to ensure that, you know, we address this issue holistically?
So, there are a number of things that we are doing right, I should say, except that we are not applying the much needed aggression. You see, the issue of drugs, I think we are handling it with kids' gloves, and we are taking too much time to metamorphosize our approach. The approach for the longest time has been that we know they could do the interventions and blah, 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 and then the next thing you find, maybe they get 1 or 2 people. But if you look at that cycle, that's what has been happening since time immemorial. That's why we came in as a youth-led organization that looks into some of these things. One of the things that we really need to improve on is funding. This time around, I was just looking around to see how many organizations are actually active in this space of fighting substance abuse, and how much effort is being put in by the donor community or the government itself. You realize that very few efforts or resources are being thrown towards curbing the drug abuse or substance abuse vice. So one, we are missing it because of lack of adequate funding. Apparently, if you look at who is fighting this issue, you realize that DEC is the biggest fighter, so to say, or the biggest partner that you can always talk about. But even DEC themselves, they are understaffed. DEC themselves, there's so much that needs to be done, because if you see how aggressive the drug issue is, the guys that are dealing with drugs, the ones that are supplying and all that, they are quickly changing their techniques, their tactics and their technique, and everything surrounding their business model. It's fast changing, but we are not changing at the pace at which they are. So as a result, our efforts somehow seem not to be doing so much, because we are very slow to respond, and also resources are not adequate. For example, the Youth Life Project, by the way, last week we are commemorating our 8th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have not received any funding related to drug abuse or substance abuse. So we can only do so much as up to how much our resources would permit. But now imagine if we even have funding, because deliberately in the preamble I did mention of what we do. Our space is open for us and all that. Our approach is unique. You see, we've been, like I had said, we've been fighting this drug or substance abuse problem the same way for over the longest period of time.
Yes.
And how much change have we seen? Not so much. You see, now it's about time that we also metamorphosized. It's about time that we adapted to current techniques, current trends. We can fight drug abuse using arts. We can fight substance abuse using various forms of applications. But now we still rely on the same, okay, we're going to do a road show, and then maybe we're going to have this workshop, maybe it will be a news item, then maybe a discussion just like this, and then the next thing we expect people to stop. No. We need to invest in the youth, in the partners, in the organizations. First of all, DEC itself must be properly funded so that if possible, DEC can actually subgrant, because they know who they work with. They can actually subgrant. When they subgrant organizations like ourselves, we know we'll be partakers of that grant because our work is there for everyone to see. When we receive that grant, for example, or that funding, we are even going to scale up our efforts, because we are not going to be limited. We are able to mobilize the youth. We are able to do the door-to-door. We are able to do this community invasion, because you see, DEC, like I've said, it's now that they are rebranding, that they are having a friendly face of the one that will get the people that will get to teach, and there's the face of DEC, which is very pronounced. When we just say DEC amongst someone that abuses substance, obviously you are just telling them to scatter. You see? So through the partners like Youth Life Project and other partners in Chibolia, in Chawama, and these other communities, we can do this together or in tandem with DEC and make sure that we achieve this objective. Let's try to do something new, something different in trying to keep this.
Now, the other issue that I would also pose is that, for example, we may have an organization like yours in Mtendele, but you see, like you put it, these drug cartels are sophisticated and well organized. Your organization may be effective there, but is it the same case? Like, do you have similar organizations that are as effective as yourselves, for example, in Misisi, in Kuku, in Obama? All these areas. So at the end of the day, you see that if in other areas it has been, if you are seeing to say, I think in Mtendere there's a lot of aggression. Even these drug cartels, they move, because we are seeing that, for example, those who are more pronounced in Chivoria, you find them in Chawam. They know where to be. They have found where they can be associating themselves, the area which they can associate themselves with. But now, how do we comprehensively attack in terms of making sure that it's an approach which is multi-targeted, and it is being done with that aggression that you mentioned? Because at the end of the day, you are addressing this in this other constituency. This other area is becoming prone to that same vice.
Very true. So you see, every time we are dealing with issues to do with drugs, I think it's very important that we are pragmatic in our approach. We really need to be pragmatic in our approach. The beauty of this whole thing is we only need the institutions that are relevant to this to be as open-minded as possible, not to come with preconceived ideas, but to, first of all, have a consultative meeting with other stakeholders. You know, it is not utterly lack of resources. It is also, we can also attribute this to lack of coordination, because you agree with me that every constitution has got structures, even political structures. We know there's the CDF committee, there's the what. We can also ride on existing structures.
Yes.
DEC can decentralize to a point where we can have at least an officer or a representation or a representative. It could be from the WDC. You see, where we can have at least a representative of DEC in that particular community, so that we can be versatile. Because we know the drug business, they are very active. So this is a very active arrangement. For us to be able to fight it effectively, we need to be as assertive as possible. For example, yes, we are, but also you need to understand that there are many organizations that are doing what we are doing. We may be pronounced simply because we have the privilege of being on this set or on other platforms as well. But others, they're actually doing a very good job as well, except resources are limiting. And obviously, we cannot all be at the same time be at one point. They are also doing what they can with the minimum resources that they have to manage the situation. Otherwise, we are a lot of organizations. We know ourselves. We know where we meet and what we do.
Let's talk about the role that the community plays in preventing drug abuse.
When you look at the role of the community in the prevention or in an effort to prevent drug abuse, it is important to actually understand that our community structure is broken, and hence the rise in some of these vices like substance abuse. It is really broken because when you look at the basic unit of a community is a family. In families, right now we are in tatters because there are many reasons, of course. One of them we attribute to the economic demands. So you find that parents, maybe both of them go for work. The only time they get to come home is after hours. And after hours, the children are left there. Who is taking care of them? How are they growing up? And also, the fact that in those homes where we have at least a stable income, still parents are still busy. There's the issue of, technology has brought so much good, but hasn't come with negatives, We have left our children also to be brought up by TV. Most of these things, they're seeing it on TV. Most of these things, even parents, you find that a parent is failing to divide time between social media and the children. So there are all these things that have come up. So the role of the community in fighting this substance abuse is very paramount, and we cannot overemphasize. It is incumbent upon every member of the community. I remember I've been talking during our mentorship sessions that I'm one of the privileged few that has seen generations. I grew up, part of my childhood, I grew up in that era where I couldn't just misbehave in the public because anyone who was as old as my elder brother or my father or my uncle can easily discipline me. And my parents wouldn't come out as though it is an issue of abuse or whatsoever. When they discipline me, even my parents will nod to that because they will know I misbehaved. But in this day and era, yes, we have the human rights. They are good to some extent. But again, I think we are abusing the human rights to the pedigree that they end up hurting us instead of protecting us. So it is the role of the community also tends to be so complex when you bring in all these other facets, because one, families are disintegrated. Two, the economy itself poses a danger on what should be given attention and how. Three, the role of the community also is highly affected by the institutions themselves. For example, just at the neighbor where they have a simple shop, which is supposed to be a shop where I can easily get bread, sugar, and a few other groceries that I may need for my home. Just there, they sell alcohol. And when I send my 6-year-old boy to go and get bread, you find that as early as 6, 7, 8, he finds people drinking already. So the role of the community is very important, but I think for it to be really effective, there is need for institutions like the Lusaka City Council, for example. I know when it comes to substance abuse, we talk so much about DEC, but DEC is limited up to what they can do. For example, when it comes to alcohol abuse, it is not their mandate. They may get in to some degree to maybe control one or two things, but if you look at it critically, it is the LCC that gives licenses and all those. So we need, first of all, we need harmonization amongst the institutions and also the stakeholders who are the community. So our role is very cardinal to ensure that we maintain safe places in our communities.
But is there hope? Do we have to reach the extent of the Philippines, where we saw President Duterte actually now shooting people on sight because of these drug-related issues? or we have an opportunity as a country to mitigate this problem before it worsens into a cancer that we cannot reverse?
I think it's really serious. When we are here lobbying for support, when we are here talking about how much resources we need as organizations, as youths, as institutions, that the resources that we need for us to effectively curb this evil. We are not trying to amplify something. No. If anything else, we don't think even the way we are bringing it out, we are really painting the true picture. 5 years ago, just barely 5 years ago, how many times did you hear the word heroin or crack? Was it even common?
Not at all.
If we hear someone abusing a drug, we were very sure it's marijuana or something like that. But today, marijuana is just like a cigarette. You would even say marijuana is a popular stuff like that. But so this shows the aggression that substance and drug abuse has towards our community, towards our country. I can tell you, at the rate at which we are moving, I think in the next 5 years, it will be very difficult for you and I to even sit here and talk about this just like we are talking.
The Ministry of Health recently developed policies targeting alcohol, suggesting that Chainama is the only mental health hospital. Do you think as a country we have invested in so much health centers to ensure that those youths who have been victims of such abuse of these substances get the treatment that they deserve, apart from Chainama Hospital? Do you think as a country we have invested so much in building these facilities across the country?
It will amaze you to know, first of all, that Zambia as a whole, we do not have a dedicated rehabilitation center or institution by the government. All these rehabilitation centers that we have around, they are private institutions. And the moment we say private, it comes with a cost, which is so high, which the youth that I have in Kalingalinga, the youth that I have in Karikiriki, in Kaunda Square, will not manage, because obviously the parents don't have the resources to help them. When we talk about institutional harmonization, first of all, we mean the Home Affairs, the Lusaka City Council, the Ministry of Health, harmonizing, coming together and look into this same policy and see where they are meeting. Our system, when it comes to that, I feel there is a gap that has to be quickly mended. I have an incident where we have these youths that need rehabilitation. We go to DEC. At that particular time, DEC doesn't have the resources to use for their lab. They refer us to to Chainama. We go to Chainama. First of all, we go through the same process, the long queues and everything else. At the end of that tedious process, you discover that for them to be helped to be given treatment, there is need for lab, And they will tell you, for lab cost, one youth, one person, one individual would cost 450 kwacha. I have 10 youths. I'm not funded as an organization. We're actually not funded. Perhaps we even had to walk to DEC, and from DEC we had to walk to Chainama. And now we are told 450 each youth. This is the youth that is struggling. They are willing to give it a try, to stop, to rehabilitate. And now you are telling them to pay. Do you think we are actually fighting the evil? Or we are fighting during the day or building during the day and demolishing during the night? So some of these things are not in place. Last year, it will amaze you to know that in August, I think 28th August, the president actually did promise us at Mulungushi when we were commemorating International Drugs Day. He said he's going to build the first rehabilitation center. And we were so excited. 1 year down the line, we were only updated that the site has been found. It is in Livingstone, and now they are still waiting for the Environmental Council to look into it and see if it's feasible. Then the plan has been done already. Then if the ZEMA give a go-ahead, then the site gets to be commissioned. And that's 1 year. I think we are handling this serious problem with kids clubs. We are not truthful when we are saying we are fighting drug or substance abuse. We are really playing. Actually, this, as an advocate, it gives me an indication to say perhaps the people that are supposed to fight this or help us fight this, they could be beneficiaries of this evil. Because if we should be moving at such a pace, over this big problem, I don't know who I can appeal to, but if you are listening and you know you are in the position of doing something to change the narrative, let's hold hands and change this narrative. Because if only 30% of the youth today, just 30%, went into this vice, fell into this substance abuse, Zambia will be in a mess. Zambia will be a mess.
Is there any economic recovery that can be talked about if more people turn into zombies, more young people?
Unfortunately, there won't be something like that or anything like that. We might need to start importing workers when 80-90% of our people will still have no jobs. Why? Because they'll be in a state where they cannot work. Because if you look at how many plans the president has, how many pronouncements, all these beautiful things that he talks about when it comes to economic recovery, it all stands on the fiber of the youth. It borders on the strength of the youth. When we talk of industrialization, it is the youth. We talk of whatever that is, innovation, it is the youth. But if this youth, who is fast wasting, is just washed to waste, then I don't know how that will be done. I don't know that. And I don't even think a miracle will be enough, because the rate at which we are going to have crime in the nation, it will cause that more resources be channeled towards home affairs and other, something to do with security instead of productivity.
As we come towards the end of our conversation, first of all, I'm privy to the fact that we have a new mental act now that prescribes that mental health, for example, should be conducted at community level. Mm-hmm. It means that every clinic or every facility you find there, we should be able to have access to these facilities. Mm-hmm. But 3 years down the line since the act was enacted, nothing has moved. What would be your take as an organization that takes pride in addressing issues pertaining to young people?
So when you look at, when we are discussing things at policy level, it's important also to note that politicians are the ones that are in the forefront to see to it that these policies are actually actuated. So by and large, it is lack of political will. That's one of the things that we will call out, lack of political will. You know, when there is any issue that is very important to a politician, regardless of the timing, they will move swiftly to act. But these issues such as policies that are going to protect the youth, to protect people in the community, to protect... Unfortunately, it's not the case. In our community, in our nation, a good policy for it to just actuate, actually it would even be lucky if it saw the light of the day. Policies are just so muted. It's the same thing, the way you are talking about the policy for mental health. It's the same when you look at the policy even for pollution or climate change. We've got very beautiful policies.
Yes.
Do we see them to fruition? No. So it's lack of political will.
Anyway, your concluding remarks as we go toward the end of the program, and what you would like to see, or rather what you're advocating for, so that those in relevant position and those in charge with a mandate of ensuring that issues affecting young people, especially in terms of substance abuse, are adequately addressed.
Well, there is so much need for all stakeholders. I don't think this is the time also to do finger pointing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a time for us to be as united like never before, so that we get to a point where we fight, we don't downplay the issue of substance abuse. This is a cancer that is every day moving closer to our doorstep. Sometimes we fear for our children, no matter how young they are, because in our area, for example, Kalingalinga, Mtendere, Helen Kaunda, Kaunda Square, Kalikiliki, these areas, we see kids as early as 12 years. Kids who are just in grade 4 or 5 abusing these substances.
Yeah, last time I saw one of them, Wakamba,
Yes.
sister.
Yes, it's very,
even the language changes.
Yes, it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening. We see them abusing these substances. So it's not an issue that we can downplay, and certainly not an issue to finger point, but an ideal scenario would be resources to promptly be put forth so that institutions like DEC can have adequate resources, institutions or rather various stakeholders that are in this line of advocacy also tend to be incentivized so that it will be easy for them to carry out sensitization programs and their other counseling programs and rehabilitation programs. Because every time we are fighting or talking about this substance abuse, it is not a cheap venture, I continue to say, because there's a lot of mobility involved, there is a lot of activity that is involved, there's also a lot of human resources that it calls for. Because you see, we need to have counselors, we need to have maybe entertainers, we need to have the teachers themselves. And so if you look at it, it's a holistic arrangement that will call for, from the medical personnel to the tiniest contributor in the community who is just going to tell you they are found there, or this is what happens. You need everyone. So for you to coordinate everyone, there's also so much resources that are needed. I guess it's just that time is not enough. It was also going to be very important if we had even gone into the issue of discussing, for example, the issue of smokeless tobacco, where we have Kube, we have Nsunko, we have Shisha, we have all these things. They are very important because if you look at even all these things that they are doing, the target is also on the youth. The women, the youth. Men are there also, but we are so much biased towards the youth because we are a majority, we are the future, and we are the ones that the country is anchoring on for us to move forward and be able to develop.
Interesting. We'll be able to ensure that we extend that platform next time so that we can have adequate conversation with regard to that topic. We were looking at the role that the community plays in preventing drug abuse, and in studio we're joined by Mr. Michael Nkosi, who is the Director for Youth Life Project Zambia. Quite interesting. Please, we have now come to the conclusion of our program this morning, but please do make time to join us tomorrow morning, Tuesday, as we bring you again in some of the exciting programs or rather topics that we are going to have. Patrick.
This is where we have to call it a day on the Camnet Breakfast Show, but always remember that if you cannot spend to ensure the well-being of young people, you will spend more towards addressing crime, and that will be detrimental towards the country's development and aspiration to become a middle, prosperous income country. And so this is where we have to call it a day, but we'll continue to discuss these issues that border on our well-being as a country. At the end of the day, we have a country to develop. Remember, those of you who managed to leave us those messages, we thank you and thank you for watching. But keep it on Camnet TV, because remember that Camnet TV is not just another channel.